You ever feel a moment split your life in half? For me, it was a Tuesday night, of all things, and we were arguing over Chinese takeout. That was it. Egg rolls, soy sauce, and the fact that she forgot to order my sesame chicken. That's all it took to crack the already fractured foundation of our marriage wide open. Melissa stood across from me in the kitchen, arms folded, one hip cocked like she was on trial, but knew she'd already won. Her hazel eyes, once the softest thing I'd ever known, were now hard and narrow, and her lips that used to tremble when I kissed her, were pulled tight in a cruel smirk. "You're seriously making a big deal over dinner?" she snapped, flinging open the cabinet door like it personally offended her. "No," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm making a big deal over the fact that you don't listen to me anymore." That set her off like a match to gasoline. "Here we go," she said, slamming a glass down on the counter. "Let's talk about how poor, neglected you feels. Again, do you want a gold star for expressing your feelings? Or should I just blow you and call it therapy?" The way she said blow you wasn't sexual. It was surgical, meant to humiliate. Cut me. I stared at her, not saying a word. Because this wasn't about takeout. It hadn't been for a long time. This was about the slow erosion of everything we'd promised to protect. 1,000 tiny betrayals, none big enough to end us on their own, but sharp enough to draw blood every single day. "You always do this," she continued, pacing now, arms flailing. "You twist my words, make it sound like I'm some cold bitch. Meanwhile, you haven't touched me in weeks." That was a lie, but it wasn't even about sex, not really. The tension between us wasn't the kind that could be fixed with an orgasm. We'd had sex, sure, but it felt like a transaction. Mechanical, joyless. There was no us in it anymore. "I don't touch you because you shrink away when I do," I said quietly. Her face twisted. "Oh, so now it's my fault you can't get it up? Jesus, Melissa." "Don't Jesus me," she snapped. "I'm not the one who walks around this house like a fucking ghost, acting like everything is fine when clearly it's not. You want to talk about shrinking away? That's all you do. Shrink. Vanish. Hide in your fucking silence like it's some noble act." I took a step back. Not physically, but emotionally. The kind of step you take when you realize you're not fighting to win anymore. You're just trying to survive. My stomach turned. There was that familiar pressure building behind my ribs. The part of me that wanted to scream, to throw something, to just make her see how deeply she was hurting me. But I didn't. Because somewhere in the middle of this latest collapse, I realized something dangerous. I didn't have it in me to care anymore. Melissa must have sensed it too. She stopped mid-sentence, her chest rising and falling like she'd just run a marathon. Her cheeks were flushed. Her jaw set. She stared at me, daring me to throw something back at her. And then she spat it out. "Just disappear from my life." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed hard. Solid. Final. My mouth opened. Closed. I had 1,000 things I could have said. Could have reminded her of the nights we stayed up dreaming about our first house. About our daughter we lost at 10 weeks. About the time she broke her ankle and I carried her up 3 flights of stairs because she refused to use a wheelchair. But none of that would have mattered. She didn't want a reminder of who we were. She wanted an ending. So, for the first time in 10 years, I gave her exactly what she asked for without a single argument. I turned around, walked past the couch we'd made love on more times than I could count, past the stairs that creaked on the 4th step, the spot where we took our Christmas card photo, the hallway where we fought about whether we were ready for kids again. And I grabbed my keys. Melissa didn't follow. She didn't ask where I was going. She just stood there, stunned by the sound of her wish being granted. As I closed the door behind me, the cool night air hit my face like a slap. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was deafening. I sat in the car for a long time, hands trembling on the steering wheel, staring at our porch light still flickering from when I'd promised to fix it. And then I drove. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in a long time, I knew I wasn't staying. The road stretched like an open wound in front of me, glinting beneath the headlights. I didn't know where I was heading, didn't even look at the signs. I just kept the car moving, one hand loose on the wheel, the other clenched around the growing ache in my chest. My phone buzzed twice in my pocket. I didn't look. It wasn't Melissa. I knew that. She'd meant what she said. Just disappear from my life. The echo of her voice wouldn't leave me alone. I rolled down the window, hoping the cold November wind might carry it away. It didn't. All it did was remind me I hadn't brought a jacket. After an hour, I finally slowed down when I saw neon through the trees, the soft pink and amber glow of a quiet bar tucked off the highway. It wasn't the kind of place we used to go. Melissa hated bars like this, called them divorce factories full of desperate men and bored women. But at that moment, it felt like a sanctuary. I pulled into the nearly empty lot and shut off the engine. For a while, I just sat there, staring through the windshield like it might offer me answers. It didn't. My hands were still shaking as I climbed out and walked toward the door, past the flickering sign that read Rocco's in tired red letters. Inside, the place was dim, warm, and nearly empty. A few locals sat at the bar, hunched over their drinks like they were trying to disappear into them. A jukebox in the corner played a slow, aching blues tune that suited the mood too well. I took a seat at the far end of the bar and didn't even glance at the bartender before saying, "Whiskey, double." She poured it without a word, and I threw it back like it might burn the past out of me. It didn't, just left a trail of fire in my throat and a dull throb behind my eyes. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, staring into the amber swirl of my second glass. Long enough to feel a kind of numbness creep into my bones. Long enough that I didn't hear the door open behind me, but I felt her presence before I turned. "Matt." The voice hit me like an electric jolt. I turned slowly, half expecting it to be a hallucination. But no, there she was. Lana, Melissa's cousin. Long auburn hair falling in waves over her shoulders. Dark green eyes wide with something between surprise and concern. She wore a leather jacket over a low-cut top, tight jeans hugging her hips. I blinked a few times, wondering if I'd passed out and dreamed her into being. "Lana," I said slowly, my voice hoarse from the whiskey and emotion. "What are you?" "I should be asking you that," she said, stepping closer, her heels clicking softly on the worn wood floor. She glanced at my glass, then back at my face. Red eyes, clenched jaw, the tension in my shoulders. Her expression shifted from curiosity to something far deeper. "I was out with some friends," she added, gesturing behind her. I followed her motion. Two women at a table in the corner, laughing about something, had turned to look at us. "But—" She hesitated, then stepped closer, her voice quieter now. "You shouldn't be alone right now." I let out a breath that was more of a sigh. "Well, that makes two of us." Lana didn't laugh, didn't smile. She just stood there for a beat, then gently touched my forearm. "Come sit with us." I shook my head. "I'm not exactly great company right now." "Exactly," she said, eyes softening. "You need people. Even just warm bodies near you. Trust me." Her grip on my arm wasn't forceful, but I let her lead me anyway. We crossed the room together, and as we approached the table, her friends looked at me with the kind of interest women reserve for men clearly walking around with a broken heart. I heard one of them whisper something, and Lana turned to them with a glance that said, "Not now." "This is Matt," she said simply. "Melissa's husband." The name dropped like a stone into the center of their table. Both women straightened, eyes flicking between us. One gave a small nod of understanding. The other, a dark-haired woman with sharp cheekbones, offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Tara," she said. "This is Jen." "Hey," I murmured, sliding into the seat Lana pointed to. I could feel her watching me, not in the way women look at a man they find attractive, though there was something warm in her eyes, but in the way someone watches a wounded animal, ready to help or step back. Lana leaned toward me as the conversation started up again around us, soft and aimless, giving me room. "Want to talk about it?" she asked gently. "Not really." She nodded, didn't push. We sat there for a while, the four of us, drinks passing back and forth, laughter rising and falling from the other end of the table. I didn't say much, but Lana never left my side. At one point, Jen leaned close to Lana and whispered, "You sure about this?" Her eyes darted to me. Lana just nodded once and whispered back, "Yes." Then she turned to me again, her face open, her voice low. "You don't have to go back tonight." I blinked. "What?" She shrugged. "I mean it. You shouldn't be alone. And you definitely shouldn't go back there, not tonight. Whatever happened, you're not okay. And I'm not letting you pretend you are." I laughed softly. "And what? You're just gonna babysit me?" "No," she said, tilting her head. "I'm going to take care of you. At least for tonight." The words landed heavier than I expected. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her mouth, full and slightly parted. Her eyes, rimmed in smoky liner, but still so incredibly clear. The curve of her neck, the faint scar near her collarbone. She was beautiful, stunning, actually, but it wasn't just that. It was the intention in her expression, the way she looked at me like I mattered. Melissa hadn't looked at me like that in years. "I can drive myself," I muttered, reaching for my keys. But Lana reached out first. Her fingers slipped into mine. "No," she said quietly, firmly. "You're not going back. And I'm not letting you be alone. Come with me." She took the keys from my hand without waiting for permission. And for the first time since walking out that door, I didn't fight back. The hum of the highway filled the silence between us as Lana drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting in her lap, fingers occasionally drumming against her thigh. I sat in the passenger seat, still numb, still unsure how I had ended up here, in a car that wasn't mine, next to a woman who wasn't my wife, heading toward a destination I hadn't chosen. I should have protested more. I should have insisted on going home, or at least to a motel. But something in the way Lana took the keys from my hand, so fluid and sure, so effortlessly decisive, made it feel right. Like maybe, for once, I didn't have to be the one holding everything together. "I live just a few minutes away," she said, breaking the silence. "I got lucky with a rent-controlled condo after college and never left. It's small, but it's quiet." I nodded, staring out the window, watching trees blur by under the streetlights. "You didn't have to do this, you know." "Didn't I?" I glanced at her. Her expression was unreadable, but her grip on the wheel was relaxed. She wasn't flustered. If anything, she looked calm, like this wasn't a rescue mission, but something she'd been preparing for. "I could have just crashed somewhere," I said, mostly to fill the silence. "You didn't have to get involved." "I wanted to get involved." Her voice was soft, but certain. "I saw your face back at that bar, Matt. You looked like you were trying not to unravel. And you were failing." I swallowed, throat dry. I didn't want to fall apart in public. "You didn't, but you were close." She glanced at me again. "And I wasn't going to leave you like that." We pulled into her complex a few minutes later, a modest two-story building with ivy crawling up one side and a sleepy stillness to the air. Lana parked and turned off the engine. The interior lights blinked on, casting a soft glow over her face. "I live on the second floor," she said, handing me back my keys with a faint smile. "You won't need these tonight." Before I could argue, she was already out of the car, walking ahead of me with purposeful steps. I followed, silent, watching the way her hips swayed naturally with each step, how her jacket clung to the curve of her waist. There was something strangely intimate about being led like this. Not seductively, not yet, but protectively. She unlocked the door to her condo and held it open for me. The place smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Warm lighting, hardwood floors, a couch with throw pillows, a soft-looking blanket draped over the side. Everything was clean but lived in. There was comfort in the details. Lana dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her boots, and turned to me. "You want water? Tea? Something stronger?" I hesitated. "I think I've had enough whiskey for one night." She smiled, not the polite kind, but the real kind, soft and crooked. "Water it is." I stood awkwardly in the middle of her living room as she disappeared into the kitchen. I noticed framed photos along the bookshelf, a younger version of Lana on a beach, another with what looked like her mom and a dog, a third that made my stomach twist. Her and Melissa, smiling, cheeks pressed together, drinks in hand. From a birthday party, maybe? She returned with a glass of water and held it out. "Here, drink this. You look like you haven't had anything but disappointment in days." I gave her a weak laugh. "That's not far off." I took the glass and sat down on her couch. The cushions sank just enough to make me feel like I could stay there for hours. She sat next to me, not too close, but not far either. For a while, we didn't talk. The silence between us was no longer uncomfortable. It was a kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. She curled one leg beneath her, studying me. I stared at the glass in my hand like it might hold answers. "You want to tell me what happened?" she asked eventually. I let out a long breath. "We fought. Again. But this one was different." She waited. "She told me to disappear." Lana's eyes narrowed slightly. "She said those exact words?" I nodded. "And you just left?" "I think that's what surprised her most," I said quietly. "I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just walked out." Lana looked down at her hands. "I always wondered how long you'd hold out." That made me glance up. What do you mean? She hesitated, just for a second, then met my gaze. I've hated how she treats you. I've hated it for a long time. The words didn't shock me. Not really. But hearing them from someone other than myself, someone who had watched from the outside, hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't always like this, I said, defensively at first. Things changed. I changed. Maybe we both. No, she interrupted gently. Matt, you didn't change. You just started shrinking. Quietly. Bit by bit. Her words stole the air from the room. I watched it happen, she said. Every holiday, every family dinner. You'd get quieter. Smaller. She'd talk over you, twist things you said, make you feel like you were the crazy one for asking her to be kind. I swallowed, throat tight. I used to think maybe you were just tired. Overworked. But then I saw how you looked at her when she wasn't paying attention. Like you were holding your breath, hoping this would be the moment she saw you again. I blinked hard. I didn't want to cry. Not in front of her. Not in front of anyone. I never thought anyone noticed. I whispered. I noticed, Lana said. And I hated it. Because you didn't deserve that. The air shifted. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't just Melissa's cousin anymore. She was someone who had seen my pain, long before I acknowledged it myself. She reached out then, slow and deliberate, and placed her hand on mine. It was warm, grounding. I didn't pull away, and she didn't let go. The car ride from Lana's condo to her house was quiet. Not heavy, just still. The kind of silence that wasn't asking to be filled. I didn't realize how badly I needed that kind of silence until I had it. After a long pause, I tried to insist again, weakly, that she could just drop me at a hotel or even back home. She'd given me a look. Not angry, not scolding, just steady and impossible to argue with. No, I'm not taking you back there like this, she'd said. And that was the end of it. Now, as her car turned onto a quiet, tree-lined street, I recognized the neighborhood. It was older, not flashy like Melissa's friends' gated communities, but clean and welcoming. The kind of place with front porches, wind chimes, and people who still waved at their neighbors. Lana pulled into the driveway of a modest, craftsman-style home with soft yellow lights glowing from the porch. She put the car in park, glanced at me once, then climbed out. I sat still for a moment longer, watching her walk up the steps, her keys already in hand. I wasn't ready for whatever this was, but I wasn't ready to go home either. By the time I got out of the car, she was already holding the door open. Come on, she said. Get inside. The air was colder now, sharp against my skin as I crossed the lawn and stepped into the warmth of her house. It smelled faintly of jasmine and fresh laundry. Clean, lived in, real. There were books on the coffee table, a blanket tossed over the back of the couch, a cat I hadn't noticed at first darting behind a chair like I was some kind of invader. Ignore her, Lana said, locking the door behind us. That's Juniper. She's dramatic. I chuckled, and it surprised me how much it felt like relief. A sound I hadn't made in weeks. Lana didn't rush me. She didn't smother me with questions or try to cheer me up with false optimism. She walked into the hallway and came back with a folded blanket and a pillow, then set them on the couch with care. You're not going home tonight. Not like this, she said. I meant it. I sat on the edge of the couch, the pillow beside me, the blanket already starting to smell like her shampoo, something clean, herbal, grounding. She disappeared for a moment and returned with a glass of water, then placed it on the coffee table. I'll grab you some sweats, she said, disappearing again. I took the glass and sipped, feeling the coolness coat my throat like balm. My body was starting to ache now, the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from physical labor, but from holding yourself together for too long. Lana returned with a pair of gray sweatpants and a soft old t-shirt. They might be a little snug. They're my brother's. He left them here last time he visited. You're taller, but they'll work. Thanks, I said softly. She didn't hover, just handed them to me and turned to give me space. I changed quickly, folding my own clothes into a neat pile and setting them on the edge of the couch. The soft cotton of the borrowed clothes was comforting in a way that surprised me, like my body had finally gotten the memo that it was safe to let go. Lana reappeared a few minutes later, now in leggings and a loose sweatshirt, her hair tied up messily, barefoot and casual, yet still beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. There was something about seeing her like this, in her space, in her comfort, that reminded me how different this moment was from the life I'd just walked away from. She moved to the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and grabbed 2 mugs. Tea okay? Sure. I watched her as she moved, fluid, intentional. Every motion she made was the opposite of Melissa. Where Melissa moved like she wanted to be watched, Lana moved like she had nothing to prove. She wasn't performing. She was just being. She brought the mugs back, set one in front of me, then sat on the far side of the couch, tucking her feet beneath her. Her body angled toward me, but she gave me space. The tea was some kind of mint blend, calming, warm, subtle. We sat like that for a while, sipping quietly, and then I spoke. I didn't think I'd actually leave. Lana looked at me, waiting. I've had so many fights with her. Years of them. And I always stayed. Every time. No matter what was said, no matter how much it hurt. But this time, I trailed off. She didn't think you'd go either, Lana said gently. That's why she said it. Because she thought you wouldn't. That you'd beg. Apologize. Crawl. I stared down into my tea, heat rising behind my eyes. Maybe I would have. A year ago. Maybe even 6 months ago. But tonight, something just snapped. I didn't have anything left to give her. Lana reached out, not to touch me, just to place her hand near mine. I looked up, and her voice dropped. She doesn't see you anymore. But I do. That did it. Not a sob, not a meltdown, but a tear. A single, quiet drop that slid down my cheek before I could stop it. I wiped it away fast, embarrassed, but she didn't flinch. Didn't pity me. Just sat there, steady as a lighthouse, while I finally let myself feel what I'd been running from. She reached for the blanket and gently pulled it over my lap. You're safe here, she said. I didn't respond. I didn't have the words. But I felt it, the truth in what she said. The strange safety of a space that wasn't mine, but didn't ask me to be anything other than what I was in that moment. After a while, she stood up and stretched. I'm going to bed. Guest room's down the hall if you decide you want a door. But the couch pulls out if this feels better. Thanks, I said. My voice cracked, but she didn't comment on it. She paused at the hallway, then looked back at me. I'm really glad I saw you tonight. I nodded. Me too. She lingered 1 second longer, as if she wanted to say something else. Then she disappeared into the hallway, her footsteps soft on the hardwood. I leaned back against the couch, the blanket pulled to my chest, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to hold the pieces of myself together, and I wasn't falling apart either. I was just here, breathing, alive, and someone had made space for that. I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes the room was dimmer, the TV screen dark, and the tea on the table had gone cold. The blanket Lana had given me was pulled up to my chest, tucked around me in a way I definitely hadn't done myself. My neck ached from sleeping upright, but for the first time in months, I wasn't waking to tension or dread, just quiet. Then I heard it, soft footsteps, a faint clink of glass, and the low hum of the refrigerator door closing. Lana moved through the kitchen like she was trying not to disturb me, but something in me was already awake, pulled gently toward the sound of her presence. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. You're still awake? She startled a little, then smiled. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. She carried a glass of water in one hand and a small plate in the other. I figured you probably hadn't eaten anything since, well, everything. You didn't have to. Matt, she interrupted gently. You need something in your stomach, even if it's just crackers. I couldn't help but smile. You're bossy. You need bossy right now. She set the plate on the coffee table, crackers, cheese, a few green grapes, and then sat down on the couch beside me. Not quite as close as before, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. She tucked her legs underneath herself and looked at me with a softness that felt almost dangerous. You barely slept, she said quietly. I could hear you breathing from the hallway. Was I snoring? No. She shook her head. Just restless. She hesitated, then added, You've been carrying so much. My throat tightened. I think it all finally caught up. Good, she murmured. You don't need to keep pretending you're made of stone. I let out a slow breath, leaning back into the couch. It's just years of this. Years of walking on eggshells. Years of trying to figure out which version of her I'm getting that day. And when she told me to disappear, it was like some final switch flipped. Lana's jaw tightened. I wish I could say I'm surprised she said that. But I'm not. I looked at her, waiting. She ran a hand through her hair. Do you remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago? When we were all at your place? I nodded. She snapped at you because you bought the wrong cranberry sauce. I went out to the deck to cool off, and she followed me. She laughed it off and said you were emotionally needy and that she had to handle you like a delicate pet. Lana's expression shifted, anger simmering beneath it. I wanted to throw her into the damn table. The shock must have shown on my face because she softened immediately. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I don't mean to make this worse. No, I said, my voice rough. You're not. I didn't know anyone noticed. I noticed. Her eyes were warm, focused. Every time she belittled you, every time she twisted things you said, every time she pretended she was the victim. I saw all of it. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you say anything? I figured you still loved her, she murmured. And I thought maybe I was overstepping. And, she hesitated. Because every time I saw you, I wasn't sure if I was angry at her or protective of you. That pulled the air right out of my lungs. Protective? I asked, voice low. She didn't look away. Yeah, really protective. Something shifted in the space between us, subtle but powerful. Not sexual yet, but undeniably intimate. An electric awareness humming beneath the quiet. I looked down at the plate she'd brought me, then back at her. Why are you doing all this, Lana? Because you needed someone, she said. And because I couldn't let you go back to a house where someone tosses your heart aside like it means nothing. Another silence. This one warm, heavy, full of things we weren't saying yet. I reached for a cracker mostly to give my hand something to do. Lana watched me with a soft smile, then pulled the blanket back over my legs when it fell away, her fingers brushing my knee. Light, warm, lingering just enough to make my breath catch. She noticed, and she didn't move away. You're freezing, she said, but her voice had changed. Lower, gentler, with something unspoken underneath it. It's been a long night, I said. It has, she agreed. But you're not alone in it. Her hand stayed on my knee a moment longer before sliding away reluctantly. I'm glad you're here, she whispered. I met her gaze. I don't think I could have handled tonight without someone. You shouldn't have to handle everything alone, she murmured. Not anymore. The clock ticked softly in the background. Juniper the cat padded into the room, hopped onto the armchair, and curled into a fluffy ball. The house felt warm and safe, nothing like the place I'd left behind hours ago, the place where I was told to disappear. Lana lifted her mug, took a slow sip, then exhaled. Can I ask you something? She said. Yeah. When you walked out tonight, did it hurt because she said those words? Or because you realized you believed them? The question hit me straight in the chest. I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle. Both, I said finally. But mostly the second. Her breath caught softly, and when I opened my eyes again, she looked at me with a tenderness I hadn't seen from anyone in years. Then let's unlearn that, she whispered. Together. And for the first time since the fight, since the car ride, since the bar, I felt something unexpected rising through the exhaustion. Not hope, but something close to it. I don't know how long we sat there. Maybe minutes, maybe an hour. Time had stopped behaving normally the moment I stepped into Lana's house. Everything felt slower, warmer, strangely sharper. Like my senses were waking up after years of being dulled. The living room lights were dimmed to a soft glow. Juniper's purring had become a steady rhythm in the background. Lana shifted slightly on the couch, her knee brushing mine under the blanket. It was an innocent touch, technically, barely anything at all, but it sent a quiet jolt through me. She noticed. I saw it in the way her breath caught for just a second, the way her eyes flicked down, then back up to mine with a softness that bordered on something else, something heavier, charged. You're warming up, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I think that's your blanket doing all the heavy lifting. She smiled, slow and faint. You keep blaming the blanket, but I'm not convinced. That smile? God, I hadn't seen a smile like that directed at me in so damn long. Not playful, not mocking, not forced, just genuine, tender in a way that made my chest ache. I swallowed. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say right now. You don't have to say anything, she murmured. You've said enough tonight. She reached out, not to touch me, at first. Her hand hovered near mine, close enough that the warmth of her fingers grazed my skin. The space between our hands suddenly felt like a fault line waiting to shift. I could have moved away. I could have folded my hands, or grabbed my water glass, or pretended I needed to stretch. But I didn't move. Not even a little. Lana's fingers brushed mine, soft, uncertain, but undeniably intentional. Something in my chest gave. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. A crack forming in the wall I'd built over years of emotional exhaustion. "You're shaking," she whispered. "I don't think it's the cold." Her eyes lifted to mine, green, bright, and locked on me with a focus that made the air feel impossibly tight. "Then what is it?" I exhaled slowly. "I think I'm remembering what it feels like to have someone close who cares." Her lips parted, just barely. Not in shock, but in recognition. "I do care," she said. "I care more than I probably should." Her thumb traced the side of my hand, one soft, lingering stroke that made my pulse throb in my wrist. I felt it everywhere. Not sexually, not yet, but in a deeper place I hadn't let anyone reach in a long time. "Lana." I said her name like it meant something, like it had weight. She leaned closer, not enough to touch, but enough that her hair brushed my shoulder, enough that I could smell the faint vanilla and citrus in her shampoo. She didn't back away. "You don't have to apologize," she murmured. "Not for needing something. Not for feeling something." "I'm not sure what I'm feeling," I admitted. "That's okay," she whispered. "Feel whatever comes." Her hand slid over mine more fully now, her fingers threading between mine with slow, careful pressure. The way she did it, so gentle, so patient, felt like she was asking permission without speaking. And I didn't pull away. I couldn't. It felt right. Shockingly right. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "I don't know how to cross this line." She looked at me like she already knew. "You already did." I shook my head. "It's not fair to pull you into this. You're Melissa's cousin. This is messy. It's—" Lana shifted even closer, close enough that her knee pressed fully against mine beneath the blanket, close enough that her breath warmed the side of my jaw. "You didn't pull me into anything," she said. "I stepped into it. On purpose." The admission landed like a spark. I turned toward her, and for a moment we just stared at each other. Eyes locked, breath mingled, the electric tension stretching between us like a live wire. Her face was inches from mine, close enough that I could see the tiny flecks of gold in her irises, close enough that her lips trembled slightly. Not from fear. From wanting. "I shouldn't," I whispered. "Maybe not," she replied softly. "But you want to. And so do I." My heartbeat hammered in my ears. Lana reached out with her free hand, brushing her fingers along my jawline. It was a feather-light touch, almost hesitant, but intimate enough to make my entire body tense with the sheer awareness of it. My breath shuddered. She stroked along my cheek, then down the side of my neck, her fingertips barely grazing my skin. The simple contact felt more intimate than anything Melissa had given me in years. "Lana," I said again, but my voice was different this time. Deeper, rougher. "Hmm?" She murmured, leaning in, just slightly, just enough that her forehead brushed mine. "I don't want to make a mistake," I breathed. She tilted her head, her nose brushing mine, the barest hint of a slow, deliberate nudge. "Then don't." And then it happened. Not dramatic, not rushed, just a soft, fragile, achingly slow kiss. Her lips pressed to mine with the gentlest pressure, like she was giving me the chance to stop it, to breathe, to rethink, to pull away. I didn't. My hand lifted instinctively, cupping her cheek, feeling the warmth of her skin, the delicate quiver of her breath. The kiss deepened only slightly, still tender, still careful, but full of a vulnerability I wasn't prepared for. When we finally pulled apart, we both inhaled sharply, almost in sync. Her forehead rested against mine. "We crossed a line," I whispered. "I know. We can't go back." "I don't want to." Neither did I. Not anymore. Not after feeling something real for the first time in years. We sat there in the quiet for a long time, the kiss still lingering between us like a breath held too long. Lana's forehead rested lightly against mine, her hand still cradled in mine, our knees brushing beneath the blanket. She didn't speak, and neither did I, not at first. There was nothing to say that wouldn't feel too big, too fast, or too wrong. And yet, nothing about this felt wrong. My entire body felt tense, but not from fear. It was something else, anticipation laced with guilt, longing tangled with hesitation. Every muscle in me was coiled tight, not because I was resisting, but because I was afraid of how easy it had become to let go. Lana finally leaned back, just enough to look at me. Her eyes were darker now, her pupils dilated, lips parted like she was still catching her breath. "I don't want you to think this is about revenge," she said softly. "It's not." I nodded. It doesn't feel like revenge. She searched my face, her voice dropping. Then what does it feel like? I let the question sit in the air for a moment. I knew the answer, but saying it out loud felt dangerous. Still, I owed her honesty. It feels like something I haven't let myself want, I said, my voice raw. Something I thought was gone for good. Lana's fingers slid along my wrist, slow and deliberate. Then maybe we stop pretending tonight didn't happen. Stop pretending we don't feel what we feel. She moved in again, not rushed, not desperate. Just sure. This kiss was different. Deeper. No longer hesitant. Her lips parted beneath mine, and I could taste her breath, feel the way her hand pressed into my chest like she was trying to memorize the beat of my heart. We kissed slowly, tenderly, exploring each other in a way that didn't feel like lust. It felt like relief. Like two people peeling off layers of grief and loneliness with every movement. My hand slid into her hair, fingers curling at the base of her neck. She moaned softly against my mouth, just a faint sound, but it lit something inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Desire. Not the hollow, frantic kind that came from trying to fix a broken marriage with sex, but real, slow-burning need. I pulled back just enough to look at her, to give her one last chance to change her mind. She didn't. Come with me, she whispered. I stood slowly, her hand in mine, and she led me down the short hallway toward her bedroom. The walls were lined with soft photos, mostly landscapes and faded memories, nothing ostentatious. Just pieces of her. Her bedroom was warm. Dim lamplight spilled across soft sheets and plush pillows. The bed was unmade, lived in, inviting. Lana turned to face me in the doorway. Her eyes searched mine, and I could see it, how much she meant this. Not as a moment of escape, not as a fling, as something more. Are you sure? I asked. She stepped closer, her hands on my chest. I've never been more sure of anything. I kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the way her body pressed against mine. She reached for the hem of her sweatshirt, and I stopped her. Just for a second, my hands gently taking over. I want to see you, I murmured. Her breath hitched as I pulled the fabric up and over her head, revealing soft, smooth skin, the swell of her breasts in a lacy bra, her stomach rising and falling with nervous excitement. She was beautiful, achingly so, vulnerable, but unafraid. I ran my fingers along her side, down to her hips, and she shivered under my touch. She undressed me in return, slowly, peeling away the borrowed shirt, letting her hands explore the places even I had forgotten how to feel good about. She touched me like I was something worth holding, worth keeping. When we finally fell onto the bed, it wasn't frantic. It wasn't about possession. It was about rediscovery. Her mouth traced soft, burning paths along my chest. My hands explored every inch of her, learning her, memorizing her. She whispered my name in a way that didn't feel like a cry. It felt like a homecoming. We moved together, bodies tangled in soft sheets, breath synced like a rhythm neither of us wanted to break. It was gentle, then urgent, then tender again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't choreographed. There were moments we paused, laughed quietly, adjusted, found our way back into each other's arms. There was nothing performative, just raw, unfiltered connection. When she came, it was with a soft gasp, her fingers digging into my back, her legs wrapped tight around my waist. And when I followed, it wasn't just release, it was surrender. Like I was letting go of years of anger, confusion, and hollow affection. We lay there afterward, tangled together, skin to skin, breath still uneven. She pressed her face into my neck and whispered, "I don't regret this." "Neither do I," I said, my voice barely audible. We stayed that way, her body curled against mine, the scent of sex and lavender lingering in the air. My hand ran gently up and down her back, feeling the curve of her spine, the softness of her skin. "I'm scared," I admitted. She looked up. "Of what? Of what comes next?" She nodded, resting her head against my chest again. "Me too. But we're not doing this alone anymore." I closed my eyes, her breath warming my skin. For the first time in years, I didn't feel used. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like I had to justify my existence to the person next to me. I just felt wanted. And that changed everything. Morning came too fast. Soft light bled in through the bedroom curtains, pale gold and quiet. I lay there for a long time before opening my eyes, unsure if I wanted to face the world just yet. The scent of Lana still clung to the sheets, lavender, skin, sex, and for a moment I let myself exist only in that scent, in that warmth, in the memory of her body wrapped around mine just hours earlier. But the weight in my chest was back. Guilt, not regret, not for what we did, but guilt still seeped into my bones like cold air under a door. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face with both hands, trying to steady my breathing. The blanket had slipped low on my waist, and the air against my skin made everything feel too real. Last night wasn't a dream. It had happened. I had crossed a line, and Melissa still didn't know I was gone. I glanced at the empty side of the bed. Lana wasn't there. I heard soft sounds from down the hall, the quiet clink of dishes, the faint rumble of a kettle, and beneath it all, music, something soft and acoustic. She was giving me space. God, she was so good at that. I pulled on my clothes from the night before, creased, wrinkled, smelling faintly of whiskey and something sweeter, and made my way out into the hallway. Lana stood in the kitchen, barefoot in pajama shorts and a long t-shirt, her hair messy from sleep, a mug of tea in one hand. She didn't turn when she heard me. I figured you'd be up soon, she said softly. You want coffee? Sure, I said, voice thick. Thanks. She poured it without a word, handed it to me, then leaned back against the counter. Neither of us spoke for a minute. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't cold. But something between us had changed. Not broken, not strained, but shifted. Like we both understood that the night before had been a dam breaking, and now we were standing in the flood together. I thought maybe you'd sneak out, she said quietly, not accusing, just honest. I thought about it, I admitted. She nodded. But you didn't. No. Why? I exhaled, staring into my coffee. Because being here feels more honest than anything I've felt in years. Lana stepped closer. But, I looked up. But I still don't know what the hell happens next. She reached for my free hand, lacing her fingers through mine again like she had the night before. We don't have to know yet. You don't owe me answers. You don't even owe me a plan. I searched her face. Then what do I owe you? Truth, she said. Just that. No more pretending you're okay when you're not. I nodded slowly. I can do that. The moment was quiet again, but softer now, less like walking a wire, more like stepping into something new. We sat at the kitchen table with our mugs, the silence between us filled only with sips and the sound of the clock ticking gently on the wall. Then my phone buzzed. Once, twice, a third time. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Melissa. Lana's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the tension ripple through her body, subtle and quiet. I haven't checked anything since I left, I muttered. I turned off notifications. You want to check it now? I hesitated. Then finally, I set the mug down and pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls. 5 voicemails. 3 texts. All from Melissa. The texts were short, clipped, and increasingly frantic. Where are you? Matt, this is ridiculous. I swear to God if you're trying to guilt me, it won't work. Answer me. Just come home. I stared at the last one the longest. Just come home. Like none of it had happened. Like those words, just disappear from my life, hadn't exploded everything. I looked up, and Lana was watching me, her expression unreadable. She's panicking, I said. She thinks I'm trying to manipulate her. Of course she does, Lana said quietly. Because that's what she would do. I felt the weight of those words settle over me. I stood up, pacing the kitchen now, the phone still in my hand. I don't want to go back there. Then don't, she said immediately. I turned. But I can't hide here forever. No one's asking you to. She stood too, facing me. But that doesn't mean you owe her anything right now. You don't have to explain yourself to the person who pushed you out the door. She's my wife. Lana flinched. It was subtle, but it was there. I regretted the words immediately. I didn't mean it like that. I know, she said. But Matt, are you still trying to be her husband? Or are you just afraid of who you'll be if you're not? That hit deeper than I wanted it to. I don't know who I am outside of her, I said honestly. I don't know who I've been with her. But last night, I looked at Lana. I felt real again. Her eyes softened. Then start with that. I sat back down, the phone face down on the table now. Lana joined me. This time, she didn't reach for my hand. She just sat with me, close, quiet, present. And I realized, in that moment, that what we shared last night wasn't a mistake. It was clarity, the kind that comes after years of fog. Melissa's calls would keep coming. I knew that. She would grow more desperate, more defensive, more manipulative. And eventually, she would show up. But not today. Today, I was still here. Still breathing. Still safe. And Lana, beautiful, complicated, fierce Lana, was still by my side. I didn't know what the hell came next. But for the first time, I didn't feel alone in figuring it out. Melissa showed up on the third day. Not with grace. Not with regret. But with fire. The day had been unusually quiet. Lana had left early for work. Just a half day, she said, after making sure I had everything I needed. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving, soft and brief, like it was something she wanted to do but didn't want to assume she was allowed. I'd caught her hand before she pulled away and squeezed it gently. Her smile was small, but real. I spent the morning reading, listening to music, avoiding the spiral. I'd muted Melissa's calls and messages, but the tension still crept in, hour by hour. The longer I stayed away, the more inevitable her eruption became. And when it came, it was louder than I ever expected. I was making coffee when I heard the pounding on the front door, rapid, frantic, the kind of knock that made the cat bolt from the windowsill. My heart leapt into my throat before I even got to the door. I didn't have to look through the peephole. I knew. Melissa. I opened the door slowly. She stood there, breathless, hair pulled back hastily, her eyes wild. Her phone was clutched in one hand, shaking. There you are, she snapped, stepping forward like she had the right to push inside. Jesus, Matt. What the hell is wrong with you? I stepped in front of her, blocking the doorway. Don't. Her eyes narrowed. Don't what? Don't come in here like this. Like what? Like your wife? I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. You told me to disappear from your life. I did what you asked. Her face twitched, rage, regret, denial, all flickering in the span of a breath. I didn't mean that. You sure sounded like you did. She shoved her phone toward me. I've been calling you for days. You ignore me, and now I find out you've been here? My blood ran cold. How do you know where I am? She scoffed. Small town, Matt. People talk. Someone saw you at the bar. With Lana. The name hit her mouth like a curse. I didn't respond. That was all the answer she needed. Her face contorted. Are you serious? You've been staying with her? Sleeping here? I said nothing. Melissa's voice rose. You're cheating on me? With my cousin? You told me to leave, I said, my voice even. You made it clear I didn't matter. And now you want to play the victim? That's not fair, she snapped. We were fighting. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. I stared at her. No, Melissa. You say things you don't mean. Or maybe you do. You just never expect consequences. She looked like she'd been slapped. Just then, Lana appeared at the end of the hall. She'd come home early, keys still in hand, her work bag slung over her shoulder. She froze for a second, her eyes locking with mine, then flicking to Melissa. Oh, of course, Melissa sneered. You're home. Convenient. Lana's posture shifted, shoulders tightening as she set her bag down slowly. This isn't your house, Melissa. Melissa turned on her. You think this is okay? You think it's fine to seduce a man who's been married to your family for 10 years? Lana didn't flinch. I didn't seduce him. He came here broken. You sent him out of your life. Don't act shocked that someone else saw value in what you threw away. That hit hard. Melissa's face turned scarlet. This is betrayal. No, I cut in. Betrayal was making me feel like a burden every day. Betrayal was you twisting my words, making me question my sanity, mocking my pain. I never mocked. Yes, you did, I said sharply. You minimized. You manipulated. And when you told me to disappear, something in me snapped. Because for once, I believed you actually wanted me gone. Melissa's breath was shallow now. Her fury was crumbling under the weight of realization. I didn't think you'd leave, she said, almost to herself. I know, I replied. And that's exactly why I had to. Lana stepped closer, but not between us, just beside me. Melissa's eyes flicked between us, the pieces clicking together in her mind. So what? You're together now? Just like that? We're not labeling anything, I said. We're just not pretending anymore. Melissa's voice cracked. You're throwing everything away for her. No, I said, soft but firm. You threw it away long before she ever stepped in. The silence that followed was brutal. Melissa stood frozen, chest heaving, her expression somewhere between rage and devastation. She looked at Lana one more time, hatred brimming in her eyes, then turned back to me. This isn't over, she hissed. She turned and stormed off the porch, the door slamming behind her so hard it rattled the frame. I stood there, staring at the door, trying to breathe. Lana stepped closer, gently touching my arm. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, I think so. You handled that better than I would've, she whispered. She's spiraling. She's not mad I left. She's mad she didn't get to control how it happened. Lana nodded, her hand sliding into mine. She knows it's real now. I looked at her. It was real. Whatever this was, whatever it would become, it had just been pulled into the open, stripped bare, undeniable. No more secrets. No more pretending. Just truth. Messy, painful, and honest. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. Melissa didn't call after that day. She didn't text, didn't leave voicemails, didn't knock on the door again. But I knew it wasn't over. The silence was too sudden, too calculated. It wasn't surrender, it was strategy. The kind of quiet you get from someone who's trying to figure out what move to make next. And sure enough, it came 2 days later. I was sitting on Lana's porch with a cup of coffee, legs stretched out, the chill of late afternoon creeping in under my sleeves. Lana was still inside, finishing a call for work. Juniper napped at my feet, twitching in a sunbeam. Then I heard the car pull up. I knew it was her before I even saw it. Melissa stepped out of the driver's seat wearing soft makeup, jeans that fit too well for an ambush visit, and a white sweater I'd always liked on her. She didn't slam the door this time. She didn't storm the steps. She walked up slowly, like someone playing a different role now. Soft, apologetic, rehearsed. Hi, she said. I nodded. Hi. Can we talk? I hesitated, then stood. Out here. She didn't argue. She sat down on the far end of the porch swing, leaving space between us that neither of us tried to fill. I've been thinking a lot, she began. I figured. She glanced at the coffee mug in my hand. You look different. Feel different. She nodded slowly. I didn't mean it, you know. What I said. I was angry. And you were just so cold that night. I felt like you didn't care. I wasn't cold, I said quietly. I was defeated. Melissa looked down at her hands. I didn't see that. No, you didn't. She swallowed hard. I don't want to lose you. It came out in a rush, and I felt the words hit me like a wave. But not for the reason she hoped. Not because they stirred something inside me. No, because they didn't. There was a time those words would have shattered me. A time I would have clung to them like a lifeline, desperate to believe they meant something more than panic. But not now. Now, I just felt clarity. You already did, I said gently. Her eyes snapped up. Matt, come on. We've been together 10 years. That doesn't just disappear. You're right, I said. It doesn't disappear. It slowly decays. And that's exactly what we let it do. She stood, taking a shaky breath. We can fix it. We can go to counseling. We can. No. She froze. No. I shook my head. I'm not doing this because I'm angry or because I want to punish you. I'm doing it because for the first time, I see it for what it is. I spent years trying to make you happy. Years trying to be enough. But I was never seen. I was tolerated. Managed. Dismissed. Her lip trembled. I was trying too. I know, I said. But your trying always came with a price. Silence hung between us. Melissa looked past me into the house, and I saw the flicker in her eyes, the shift. She knew. Lana was inside. This is about her, isn't it? She asked, voice tight. No, I said. This is about me. Lana just reminded me of what it feels like to be treated like I matter. Not for what I do, not for what I provide, but just for being who I am. Melissa's face twisted. She always wanted you. She always saw me, I said. There's a difference. She paced to the edge of the porch and back. So that's it. You're throwing us away? I'm not throwing anything away, I said. I'm finally letting go of what's already gone. She let out a shaky breath, then suddenly turned to the door. I want to talk to her. I stepped in front of her. No. You came here to talk to me. You had your chance with her last time. I'm not putting her through that again. Her eyes blazed. So you're choosing her. I stared at her for a long time. No, I said finally. I'm choosing me. And she's the only one who's been choosing me, too. Melissa's shoulders slumped. All the fire drained from her. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. I'll have the papers drawn up, I said softly. We'll figure out the logistics. You can keep the house. She nodded numbly. Okay. And Melissa? She looked at me, eyes red and wide. Don't twist this into some story about betrayal. Don't lie to our friends or your family. If there's anything left worth respecting, let it be the truth. She didn't answer, just walked back to her car and drove away without looking back. I exhaled slowly, letting the silence settle back over me. The door opened behind me. Lana stepped out, her arms crossed, but not defensive. Just steady, watching. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, she said, but I heard most of it. I turned to face her. She stepped closer, her voice quiet. If you need space now, I understand. I don't, I said. Not from you. She hesitated. You sure? I stepped forward, took her hand. You told me if I went back, you'd disappear. I meant it. I know, I said. And that's exactly why I didn't. She looked up at me. Eyes soft, uncertain. You were never the escape, Lana, I said. You were the mirror. You made me see myself again. Her throat bobbed with emotion. I didn't want to ruin your life. You didn't, I said. You reminded me it wasn't mine anymore. She leaned in then, slow and sure, and I met her halfway. Our kiss wasn't heated this time. It was slow, full, grounded. It wasn't about the end of something. It was about the beginning. The divorce moved faster than I expected. Melissa didn't contest it. She didn't beg again. She didn't even show up for the first court date. Her lawyers sent a few bitter emails about property and bank accounts, but emotionally, she was gone the moment I told her I wasn't coming back. I signed the papers on a rainy Thursday. Just me and a quiet legal assistant in a small office downtown. No ceremony, no drama, just a pen scratching over lines that closed a decade of my life. When I stepped back into the hallway, the rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, like the world had exhaled something it had been holding on to. I stood there for a moment, wondering if I should feel more. Grief, relief, guilt, something. But all I felt was stillness. And, surprisingly, peace. Lana had offered to come with me. I told her no. Some things I had to close on my own. But when I walked out of the building, there she was, leaning against her car, arms folded, hair pulled into a messy braid, her expression unreadable. You didn't listen, I said, half smiling. Nope, she replied, pushing off the car. Didn't plan to. She stepped closer and opened the passenger door. Get in. I did. We didn't talk much on the drive home. Her hand found mine on the center console and stayed there. No words, just presence. That was Lana's magic. She knew when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. We pulled up to her house. Our house now, though that still felt strange to say out loud. I hadn't officially moved in yet, but I hadn't gone back to Melissa's since that night. I had a few boxes in the guest room, a toothbrush in the bathroom, and a drawer full of my clothes in her dresser. It was a start. Inside, everything smelled like home. Coffee, lavender, the faintest hint of Lana's shampoo. She kicked her shoes off by the door, glanced at me once, and said, You want something stronger than tea? Yeah, I said. Yeah, I think I do. She poured us 2 glasses of wine, and we sat on the couch, legs tucked under the same blanket we'd shared that first night. A storm was building outside again, wind brushing against the windows, the occasional rattle of distant thunder. It felt right. I've never asked you, I said quietly. Do you feel guilty? She didn't answer right away. Sometimes, she admitted. But not for what we did. For how long it took me to admit I saw you. I turned toward her. How long? Since the Christmas party 3 years ago, she said, without hesitation. You brought her a gift she hated. She mocked it in front of everyone. And you just stood there, smiling like it didn't bother you. But I saw your hands shake when you poured your drink. I blinked, remembering that night with perfect clarity. The sweater Melissa had laughed about. The way she'd said, maybe you should let me shop for myself next time. You knew then? I knew you deserved more, Lana said. And I hated myself for not saying anything. I reached out, touched her cheek. You said something the night it mattered. She smiled. Yeah, I guess I did. We sat like that for a while, listening to the storm roll in. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A name I didn't need to check. I ignored it. That was the last time Melissa reached out. A single text. No words. Just a photo of our wedding day. I didn't respond. Some ghosts deserve to stay ghosts. Over the following weeks, things with Lana unfolded quietly. No grand declarations. No social media announcements. We were careful, more out of respect than shame. The family took it about as well as you'd expect. Her mother was furious. My sister was cautious but supportive. Her brother sent me a warning text that said, Don't fuck her over. She's worth more than both of you combined. I agreed. Slowly, we built something real. I started working again, part-time at first. She helped me paint the spare room into an office. We made dinner together most nights. She showed me 100 little kindnesses Melissa never had the patience for, packing my lunch when I forgot, heating a towel for me after a long shower, leaving stupid little notes on the fridge that said things like, "You make coffee sexy." And one night, as we lay tangled in bed, her fingers tracing lazy circles on my back, she whispered, "I'm glad you didn't go home that night." I rolled onto my side, looked at her in the dark. "You didn't let me." She smiled, pressed a kiss to my shoulder. "Nope, and I never will." We laughed softly, quietly, like people who finally understood what it meant to be chosen, not out of obligation, not out of fear, but because someone saw your scars and stayed anyway. That was what love looked like now. Not perfect, but real. As I drifted off that night, her body curled into mine, I thought about the last words Melissa ever said to me. Just disappear from my life. Funny, because that's exactly what I did. And it's the best decision I ever made.